you can see Trump under a great deal of pressure. I mean, this is something, it's like a storm to some degree of his own making. It was always risky because he was a pal of Jeffrey Epstein. He says that he dropped that friendship a long time ago. But his people, the MAGA people, are fascinated by it because they think it shows all kinds of misbehavior on the part of Democrats. The worry of the White House is it may show too close a relationship to Epstein by the current president of the United States. So Trump has a very difficult line to walk, I think, and the risk of embarrassment is really very, very high.
And let's start then with events in the US, where President Trump is caught in a showdown with his own allies about the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. They want all the files revealed. Last night, the US Justice Department asked a judge to unseal some of them, just as the president began legal action against the Wall Street Journal. In a moment, we'll speak to a former Downing Street disinformation expert about why the Epstein files saga has been so compelling and indeed divisive among Trump's most ardent fans. But first, let's make sense of where we're at, precisely, with Steve Erlanger, Chief Diplomatic Correspondent for the New York Times. Morning, Steve.
Good morning.
Good to speak to you this morning. So, should we consider, first of all, what the Epstein files are? What is going to be released under instructions from the Department of Justice?
Well, we don't really know. I mean, we don't know what the Epstein files really are. We don't know what's in them. I mean, his phone book has been released a long time ago. What Trump has asked the Justice Department to do is to ask the judge to release grand jury testimony in the Epstein case that put him in jail. Now, that's up to the judge. That's not something a district attorney can actually demand. So you can see Trump under a great deal of pressure. I mean, this is something, it's like a storm to some degree of his own making. It was always risky because he was a pal of Jeffrey Epstein. He says that he dropped that friendship a long time ago. But his people, the MAGA people, are fascinated by it because they think it shows all kinds of misbehavior on the part of Democrats. The worry of the White House is it may show too close a relationship to Epstein by the current president of the United States. So Trump has a very difficult line to walk, I think, and the risk of embarrassment is really very, very high.
Remind us what he himself has said about the release, the publication of the Epstein files, and I suppose that leads us to discuss the uproar triggered by a government memo published earlier this month that said there was no Epstein client list and no credible evidence that Epstein had blackmailed prominent individuals as part of his actions. And that seemed to just pour fuel on the fire, actually.
Well, it did because, Trump has always, and his people, obviously, he's always played with conspiracy theories. If you remember, Barack Obama wasn't really an American and various other things that the MAGA people and the far-right people have actually enjoyed. They are conspiracy theorists. There's this whole group, QAnon, which believes there's a whole cabal inside the government to murder children. Trump has played gently with those people. Some of them backed the January 6th insurrection. So the problem with Epstein is we don't know what's in the files. I mean, there have been some court cases. There's no question he knew a lot of very, very rich and important people. There's no question he entertained them. There's no question that he himself, along with Ghislaine Maxwell, trafficked young women, presumably not just for his pleasure, but those of his friends. But exactly who and what and how, this is what dragged Prince Andrew into the whole case. So it's very touchy, it's embarrassing, and Trump, as I say, is rather playing with fire because on one hand, his supporters think there's a massive cover-up of this massive file, and on the other hand, the Justice Department says, well, actually, maybe there isn't such a big file, and we don't have a big file, so let's at least ask the judge to release the grand jury testimony as a kind of gesture, I think. to these angry MAGA people.
Yeah, worth noting that Prince Andrew's always denied any wrongdoing
Yes.
in conversations around Jeffrey Epstein as well. Tell me about Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, who in February said a list of Epstein's clients was, quote, sitting on my desk right now to review.
Well, I have no idea what was sitting on her desk, and I have no idea what she was thinking she was reviewing. It could have been just the phone book list. It could have been something else. I don't know. I mean, Pam Bondi is very much a Trump loyalist. She's also an experienced district attorney in Florida. I mean, she's not, you know, one of these Fox people that got flown into a job just because they're good on television. But she has used, I think, in my view, the Department of Justice under Trump's push to investigate people Trump thinks are his enemies. They have given pardons. Trump has given pardons to cases that were ongoing, including to the mayor of New York, who's running again for re-election. So the question of the politicization of the Department of Justice is a real one. I don't have the answer, but there are people who are very worried about this. And here, you almost feel like Bondi's, you know, caught up in her own loyalty tests because she has this very delicate stance to take on MAGA. So what was on her desk? I don't know. Does the Department of Justice have some big file on Epstein? I don't know. I'm not sure she does right now either. And if they don't, then that will just make the MAGA people even more convinced that there's a massive conspiracy going on.
Yeah, and just a final one for you as well then, Steve, which is on this legal action by the president, who is taking action against the Wall Street Journal for its reporting in the last couple of days. Just bring us the details of what we know about that. What's the president said about what's motivated him to do this?
Well, the Wall Street Journal has, you know, good reputation.
Yeah.
It's defending its story. Trump, on the one hand, denies ever having participated in this 50th birthday book for Jeffrey Epstein. He denies ever having doodled. That's not true. Trump has doodled. I mean, we have evidence in the paper of 4 or 5 of his doodles, which he gave to charity. It's the tawdriness of the message that the Wall Street Journal describes that I think embarrasses Trump the most. So, as usual, he's blaming the Democrats and he's blaming people who hate him, and he's going to sue the Wall Street Journal, and it will cost the Journal money, but will not result in any conviction or payment to Donald Trump, because as I read the article, it is not libelous and it was done with rigorous journalistic credentials.
Steve, hello. Steve, hello. Sorry, something didn't work there, but here I am. Steve, thank you. No, that was my fault. Steve, thank you very much for your time. Good to speak to you this morning.
All the best.
Cheers, and to you. That's Steve Erlanger, Chief Diplomatic Correspondent for the New York Times. Well, Marcus Beard is an expert in misinformation. He was the strategist for misinformation in Downing Street during COVID. Marcus, for clarity, I suppose you were trying to combat it rather than spread it.
Strategist for countering disinformation, not spreading it.
I think that's important to say. And we want to speak to you about the kind of QAnon, the conspiracy theory, the attraction, I suppose, by some, quite a few people, many in the MAGA movement to the kind of Epstein saga, and why they are difficult to satisfy when it comes to this sort of story. What are the kind of principles that are at play here, perhaps that we could see in other misinformation? Why is it so attractive?
So when we were tracking these kind of narratives of Downing Street, and it's the same approach that we take now when looking at misinformation in the corporate and political world, there tend to be 3 things that make conspiracy theories and misinformation go incredibly viral. Firstly, it's just anything new or novel, surprising, regardless of its truth value. In the social world, it doesn't have to be true, it could just be new. Second thing is that if it's really kind of emotive and it either makes people angry, it makes them sad, it makes them disgusted, that has been shown time and time again to make things go super viral, both in terms of content itself and wider conversations. And also, which is super important in this kind of MAGA/QAnon story, is does it appeal to a sort of tribal sense of identity? Does it confirm beliefs that people already have? So when a story comes along that is totally unconfirmed or potentially just frankly ridiculous about a kind of cult of Satan worshipping government officials, even though the facts of it sound ridiculous, if it confirms something that they believe on a deep level, that the government is corrupt or the government is wasteful and actually, Trump is there to come and fix it, people tend to take that on board and believe it because it confirms something they already know. And going back to those first 2 points, as your previous guest said, we don't know what is in the Epstein files. It sounds like we kind of don't really know what they are either. Is it simply a client list? Is it a whole piece of research that's already been done? Is it a big pile of documents? It's kind of like a massive mystery box, and that means that people who can claim to have an inside source on these crazy conspiracy theory forums and groups and Instagram pages, they can claim that anything they want is inside of it, and they can't be proved wrong because we haven't opened the box. We don't even know where the box is, and that gets compounded even more by the fact that this is a really emotive story. It's really it is true that the Jeffrey Epstein trafficked young women. So it already makes people really angry, and so they are in this kind of mood to be able to pick up on it, and it just goes round and round.
I want to consider a couple of other things, Marcus. One is potential outcomes in all of this. Before we get to that, I want to ask you about Donald Trump's own response to this, because he is the kind of deity at the top of this MAGA movement, but yet he seems to be struggling to control the people within the movement and direct their thinking. Now, just as an advance warning, I will say a word during these quotes that I wouldn't usually say on the radio. It's not dreadful, but it's one that you may find problematic. But he attacked his supporters, this is Donald Trump, accusing them of pushing the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. Here's the quote: "Their new scam, in capitals, is what we will forever call the Jeffrey Epstein hoax, and my past, in capitals, supporters have bought into this bullshit, hook, line and sinker. They haven't learned their lesson and probably never will, even after being conned by the lunatic left for 8 long years. I've had more success in 6 months than perhaps any president in our country's history, and all these people want to talk about, with strong prodding by the fake news and the success-starved Dems, is the Jeffrey Epstein hoax." It strikes me, Marcus, the toothpaste's out of the tube somewhat. Donald Trump has kind of been fueling the energy and enthusiasm for these files, and he's now trying to get the toothpaste back in the tube. He can't corral these people, and that, I think, is something to observe about the kind of the conspiracy theory movement, in inverted commas, is that they're difficult to control.
They are. One of the reasons for this is the amount of different directions they go in. The true conspiracy theorists, this is slightly different from kind of a core misinformation where one single fact has been repeated over and over that's wrong. In these kind of groups that are truthers, I think is the right word to use it. You've got flat earth truthers. Your guest earlier talked about the Obama birthing truthers. It's people trying to find the truth by seemingly exploring everything that's not true first, but while they're exploring that, they truly believe it. And so that statement sounded quite definitive from the president, the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. And my sort of feeling about this is that phrase potentially could become redefined by him because he continues to play with it in this space. We've talked about QAnon before, and some of your listeners might not know the kind of a conspiratorial cell called QAnon that believe there's this satanic cult in government and that kind of position the president as sort of like a Christ figure, that he is sort of architecting it all, and there's a mole on the inside of government called Q who's releasing coded messages through everything that happens in basically in public news. They are literally sort of connecting letters in news reports. For those kind of groups, they will be looking at statements from the president and thinking, oh no, there's a bigger game at play here. He is not actually saying, by saying this, he's saying there's more under the surface. So that's what happens when you're sort of deep in the conspiracy circle. I think it's early days for this story. Yes. I think it's really early, and I think we will see the kind of pitch rolling change from the president over probably the next 24 to 48 hours.
Marcus, I've just got 30 seconds left with you, and I want to put to you that if this turns out to be a nothing burger, to use the now slightly famous phrase, That, again, it feels like that these people are insatiable. If all the files are put out there and there's nothing to see here, what happens then? I mean, it's unpredictable, isn't it?
Yes, it's unpredictable in terms of where they'll go, but they will almost certainly say they're not releasing what they really know.
Right.
They're saying, we know something you don't, trust us, and join our Facebook groups.
Yeah, indeed, and we can keep talking about it there for decades to come. Marcus, thank you very much indeed. Marcus Beard is an expert in combating misinformation. He worked in Downing Street during the pandemic.